Not all craft shows or farmers markets are created equal, and if you're not careful, you can waste an entire weekend and a ton of money on the wrong one. So after doing more than 80 markets, this video covers the things that I look for when I'm choosing a market. If we haven't met yet, my name's Melissa. I run a brand design studio by day and a handmade product business by night. And on this channel, I love to share with you business tips, branding tips, handmade business tips that I have learned along the way in hopes that they can help you in some way. I have done a ton of markets over the years, and being the left brain creative that I am, that means I have started to compile a list of criteria that I look for so that I can hopefully not waste my time and make better decisions moving forward when I choose to participate in one of these craft shows. So let's dig into those tips and make sure you watch till the end because I have some bonus criteria also that I'm going to share with you. All right, criteria number 1 is that they need to have been operating for a year or more. There are edge cases to this. There are markets that in their very first one they blow up, but it's not necessarily a given. You can participate in a market that's brand new and you may have an amazing experience. That's definitely happened to me before. But if you really want to make sure you're not wasting your time, it can be better to just wait until that market's been operating for a year or more. Second criteria that I look for is that the location has visibility and natural foot traffic. So that could be somewhere where there's naturally tourist traffic or it's a popular spot where people are walking around town. But for me, another location that I have always found to be really amazing is markets that are adjacent or located within shopping centers. Not only do you have tons of foot traffic from shopping centers, but people are already in the mindset to be spending money and shopping. So it's not that big of a stretch to get them to also decide to mill around the market and possibly support some of the artists or makers. Of course, it's always great when people come directly to the market, but when you're somewhere where there's natural foot traffic, that means you get a big audience that maybe didn't actually even know about the market, but ends up attending anyway. Criteria number 3, this might be a little particular to my personal tastes, but hear me out on it. My third criteria is that they're not a market that only does tent spaces, but they're a market that has maybe table spaces also. I'm biased because I love table spaces. My products are not large. I have a hard time filling a tent. So I love a table space. But the other side to that is markets who make room for smaller vendors who would desire a table space over a tent space. I have always found those markets to be some of the most vendor-centric markets. And what I mean by that is running markets is a business for these organizers, and that's great. We want them to have a great business because when they have a great business, we have great businesses. But I have kind of seen some markets in the past start making decisions that's more in their interests than the vendor interests. And lots of times, one of those criteria is they eliminate table spaces because they just want to sell the biggest spaces they can. But if you can find a market that also has table spaces, I found there's this like other side, which is when markets have multiple space options available, it means they're trying to truly cater to a wide range of creatives. Before we move on to the next one, I just wanted to stop and say, if you are enjoying this content so far, if you're getting value from it, would you please give us a like or subscribe so that you can see more content like this? It really helps our channel grow. So let's move on. All right, my fourth criteria, shorter is better. Hear me out on that. I look for a shorter market. I find they tend to be the most profitable, the highest sales per hour. My favorite, most profitable kind of market is normally a 4-hour Saturday morning market, pending it gets amazing foot traffic, right? Shorter markets tend to be better because the people who attend, they've got to decide if they want to make a purchase or not. They don't want to miss out. And so since they've got a shorter window of time of which to make this decision, they are more likely to make a purchase because they don't have 6 or 8 hours to mill about thinking, oh, I'll come back later today, or I'm going to do the whole market and come back. If they've only got 4 hours, they've got to figure out what they want to purchase before they go home, before the market ends. Likewise, when I have participated in markets that are 6-8 hours long, I find the last hour or two, you barely sell anything. It really ends up being a waste of your time. I think organizers like to sometimes make them longer because they think there's more value and therefore maybe they can justify a slightly higher booth fee price. But my personal experience and the experience that I've heard from a lot of other vendors is on those longer events, those last couple hours, you're not selling hardly anything. The sales stop around 2. Tag on to that. I prefer a 1-day market versus a 2-day market. And that is for a couple different reasons. First of all, I just do not like to give up my entire weekend because my handmade business is my second business and I've already worked a probably very long week by the time I get to this weekend market. And so I don't want to be gone the whole entire weekend. But I would also say when I have participated in 2-day markets in the past, that second day is dramatically slower than the first day. Saturday tends to be the day. It's when everyone comes out. People come out on Sunday too, but sometimes they're just coming for a Sunday stroll. There's also usually just less traffic on Sunday to begin with. So I have just always found those 2-day markets, they're almost always weighted one day significantly better than the others. So shorter markets are one of my biggest criteria. All right, my 5th criteria is that the market is a market. And what I mean by that is it is created to be a shopping experience, somewhere for the local community to come out, buy really cool, one-of-a-kind handmade things. But then there are these markets that are tied to other events. Like maybe there's a fair, like a, what's the word for that? Like a city fair. Let's switch metaphors. Maybe there is a market and it is tied to some local community event, some local festival or a parade, something like that. When I have participated in those in the past, I have found those sales to not be very strong either, because the fact of the matter is the audience is not actually here for the market. You're just hoping that they decide to spend some time in the market section of that event. And so I have personally found those to not be that great of sales for me and not really worth my time. The other side of that is I have also participated in some markets where they have added so many additional attractions to the market that it kind of stops being just a market. The organizers think we're drawing people out to this event so you can get sales. But what I've found is there's kind of an unintended consequence, which is it just becomes a community event. It just becomes somewhere to go hang out on a Saturday or on a Sunday. People are not coming anymore to go shop from fun local handmade vendors. They have come to just hang out for the day, and maybe they'll peruse some vendors and buy a couple things. But when I have attended those events, I have found the winners tend to be the food vendors and maybe stuff for kids. But a lot of the other vendors tend to suffer because the people who have come out, they are not actually there to shop. They're just there for a fun family activity. So keep an eye out for those. It's good to have maybe an attraction or two, but if an event has like 10 attractions, and a market, I've always found that those have not worked the best for me, so I tend to avoid those now. My 6th criteria is that the market is located in an area of town that both has disposable income to spend on things like handmade goods and also has an appreciation for handmade goods. If you're in an area of town that does not have as much disposable income, it's not necessarily that people won't appreciate your goods, but they just may not have those extra funds to be able to spend a little bit more on something that was made by hand versus something that was mass produced. I've definitely found that to be the case where I live here. I live in the Metro Phoenix area, and there are definitely different neighborhoods where I've had stronger sales than others. And I think it comes back to that people can afford to pay a little bit more because handmade goods usually are priced a little higher than mass produced goods because of their handmade nature. And because of their scarcity, right? And so I've definitely found that there are certain neighborhoods where I have better sales, and I think it comes back to that people just have the ability to spend a little bit more on these items than they do in other neighborhoods. Okay, and then my 7th criteria is that the market itself has a history of good marketing and promotions for their events. That is as simple as going to their Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and seeing how often they post. Do they share vendor work? Are they sharing reasons to attend the event? And how many followers do they have? And how many people are actively engaging with those posts? Of course, you can also be looking for things around town, like do they have flyers in coffee shops and other small businesses? Those things are a little less common, but definitely make sure to check out those social profiles to kind of see how active they are and how many people are engaging with them. Okay, that wraps up my main criteria for selecting a market. But I promised you some additional considerations. So I have 5 additional considerations that I also take into account when I'm selecting which craft show or art market to participate in. First of all, consider the logistics of the event. How difficult will the load in and load out be? How difficult will the setup be? What time of year is this market happening? Is it likely to be excessively hot, excessively cold? Is it during the rainy season? Even though this is the market organizer's job to organize these events, I have definitely watched some events be put together in the past, and I'm sitting here thinking, because I live in Phoenix, it's the desert, it gets hot. I'm sitting here thinking, that's an awful hot time of year. I don't know if I want to participate in that. Will people come out to that? So you've got to not just always assume that the organizer has thought about all of these things. A great market is always taking into account their vendors' needs and what's best for their needs. But people are people, and sometimes they slip and forget some things. So always be considering those logistics, how people get into the event. Is it actually easy to them? Is it easy for them to find? You also may have products that are easier or harder to load in or load out. If you can't carry your stuff and it has to come on a cart, can the cart actually get there? I did attend one event one time that had stairs. There've been 2. Where you had to get there via stairs. And thankfully my stuff's not that heavy, but it kind of threw a lot of people for a loop because we actually didn't know this until we got there. So definitely logistics, big consideration. Just give them a thought. Do I want to do this load in, load out? Is the weather going to be good for me and hopefully good for people to want to come out if I do this event? Next one, the booth fee. This is probably obvious, but consider the booth fee. Consider how expensive it is. There are some booth fees out there that are very pricey. I have not participated in some of these really big events, but even these events that are one day for $200 or $300, I think that's relatively steep. I know people who spend $200, $300 on booth fees and do great, but you have to really stop and consider, does it do great for you? I've got smaller products that are lower priced. And so a $300 booth fee, for me, I got to almost be guaranteed that the sales are going to be bananas at that event for me to spend that much money. I'm not telling you don't spend $200 or $300 on a booth fee. I am saying stop and consider. Don't just do it because all your vendor friends are doing it. Don't just do it because you really wanted to book a market that week or that month. Really consider, do I think I can make this booth fee back and a lot more? Because if you really stop and consider it in the light of your products, if you sell $4 stickers, you have to sell a lot of things to make back $300. So just consider that before you start. Don't just apply and accept just because there's this zeitgeist on social media of all your vendor buddies applying to this market. So consider the booth fee. The third consideration is their professionalism and communication. Now, this can be a little bit tricky to figure out if you have not participated before, but a couple things you can do is you can ask other vendor friends or other people you've seen participate in that event. Ask them what it's been like. Is it easy to get answers? Are they communicative? Are they clear? Did you have a good understanding of how the event was going to work before you're actually walking into setting up for the event? The other thing is you can check their social media, check their website, see how clearly they communicate. Even just when you DM them, see what they respond. Do they respond in a manner that actually makes sense? Or is it 3 words that don't really answer the question? Or are they really friendly and responsive and get back to you quickly? Those are definitely just things to be looking for, because if someone has good communication and professionalism leading up to the event, it's very likely that that's going to translate to the way the whole entire event is run. Fourth one is the application process. Is there an application process? Is there not? Is it just give us this money and you can be a vendor. As fun and easy as that is, it often can be a red flag that they're just willing to take anybody. So do they have an application process? Because if they have an application process, that is an indicator that they're actually vetting their vendors because they want a mix that is high quality and they also want a diverse mix. You're not gonna end up at a market with 16 candle vendors. An application process that's thorough, it actually is a really good indicator that they care about the vendor mix. And that is an indicator of a good market. The fifth criteria is to consider whether you've seen any of your vendor friends participating in this event and speaking well of this event. If your vendor friends are participating, if they love it, there's a very good chance it will be good for you too. Now, that's not always a given. Every market's different. You can have a market that's great one time and terrible the next time, and it's just a fluke. I actually had that. I had a girl tell me, one of my vendor friends tell me that they participated in this event. It was one of their best markets of the season. And so I participated in the next one, and it wasn't that good at all for me. It actually wasn't that good for her that time either. So that's a wonderful example of it can just be different every time and it's not always predictable, but at least watching for whether other vendors are participating in an event and maybe asking them if they have a positive experience is just a good little bit of research to do before committing to an event. At the end of the day, doing craft shows and art markets, it's really hit or miss. It's really unpredictable. You've got to be willing to accept a little bit of a risk and a little bit of a gamble with your time and money because you can follow all these criteria I just gave you and it can still be a flop. But hopefully these criteria at least get you thinking and vetting your markets with maybe a new lens. And hopefully that'll just help you be more successful over the long run. If you found this video helpful, please like this video and consider subscribing for more content about handmade business and small business branding. And if you've got other tips for how to vet markets, please tell me in the comments because I want to know them. I am always looking to better vet markets. See you in the next one.